What do
All
you
of it
mean?
could have happened without having anything to do with race. Everything you just said there, her embarrassment,
Yeah,
all of the different races being there, everything, but you still
yeah,
thought it was racialized. So that's my
yeah.
point.
And by all means, there is a possibility that I could be wrong about that too. That's another thing. Like
But the
there's a
whole point,
possibility.
Eric, but the whole point, Eric, is that you don't think you're wrong. Like,
No, no. I mean, the whole point is that I still leave room for me to be wrong. I always leave room for me to be wrong. I don't have to just because I may have a belief, an inkling of a belief or something. It doesn't mean that I'm like 100% positive about that. You know, we believe things with a different degree of certainty. So, you know, there's a possibility that it may not have been, but you know, I think that it was.
that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is that you think that it was, right? That's all I'm saying. So, like, my point is, like, um, there are a lot of encounters with racism that racialized black people have that could happen without any kind of racial element involved. I mean, not really in reality, but like I'm gonna go go with that right now. We could talk about why I said not really in reality in the future, but like, you know, limited, let's say extremely limited, as to be virtually nothing. So the question people I find that a lot of racialized white people who ask me questions about race or racism, which isn't many, but like what they typically often ask when they do ask is, how do you know it was racism? How do you know? Right? Because they don't experience what you experienced in that store typically. It's very rare for a racialized white person to experience something that you experience like that. And so most people just have no frame of reference. You know, most of it comes from media. It's not something that most racialized white people talk to other people who do experience it about. There's not a lot of opportunity for them to educate themselves about these instances. And so, therefore, you know, there's a curiosity there. You know, like, how do you know? Like, you seem so certain, you know? It's the way that sometimes I express having experienced racism and the certainty that I feel about having expressed it that unsettles them. And it's very difficult to get over that boundary because, uh, well, part of the reason, and I'm going to go back to my original point, part of the reason that I do know it's racism is because I experienced it. I've experienced it a lot. So when I have experience with something a lot, right, I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to learn more about it. I've learned quite a lot about it over the years, over the decades. And so the ways that I can recognize when racism is present are at a whole different dimensional level than someone who is not experiencing racism all the time. So it's created this kind of rift in perception because a lot of racialized white people don't have to perceive race at all. As we know, colorblindness is a big philosophy. We said we're going to talk about the different philosophies out there, where colorblindness is a big one. So that exists because a lot of people, they can be colorblind, right? They don't have to think about what color people's skin is at all. They can literally delete it from their frame of perception. And so obviously, for me, I actually attempted to do that for many, many years, and lived that way because I was encouraged to do so and I was taught to do so. But ultimately, racism kept intruding. And at first, it was actually a little bit difficult to perceive. Not the malice that I experienced, not the weaponized fear and delusion that I encountered, not the injustices that I faced. Those were very perceptible. However, in the beginning, that they were racialized experiences, I was figuring it out much like you by using the power of deduction, by eliminating other possibilities for what was happening. Um, Ultimately, what I realized, Eric, is that that methodology is inadequate for something that could literally cost me my life for no reason. So I decided to find further ways of discovering whether race or racism was at play in a given scenario. I have myriad ways of doing so at this point. And so explaining that to racialized white people, for me, it kind of is not something that I have any interest in doing because literally I built this framework for my own survival and my own thriving. So it really has nothing to do with, I'm not really trying to satisfy anyone's curiosity for something that I built to literally shield myself. Uh, you know what I mean? Is that making sense?
Yeah, yeah, I see what your framework is about.